Hello and welcome to Commendable Commotion. I'm Matthew Tannum LG and I'll be talking to some fascinating people about some equally fascinating topics that need more commotion. Today I'll be talking to Ciaran Gallagher. Ciaran is a freelance director and designer based in Dublin whose portfolio of work has been enjoyed all over Ireland. His most recent directing credits include The Last Corner Shop on Misery Hill by Mac Miramadi at Smock Alley Theatre in 2019, and Alva by Sean McDonough as part of the Seen and Heard Festival in 2020. As both director and sound designer, Ciaran most recently presented for the stage Emily Gillmor Murphy's The Horror Writer in 2019 in the Pearce Centre and the Whale Theatre Greystones to critical praise. As a lighting designer, Ciaran's artistry was most recently showcased in Overfired and GAA Mad, both taking home the Outburst Queer Fringe Award in 2018 and 19, respectively, at the Dublin Fringe Festival. Ciaran also recently served as sound designer for Eclipsed in 2020 by Patricia Burke Brogan and directed by Kate Canning in its first stage reimagining since 1992. In 2016, Ciaran's version of Simon Stevens' Punk Rock was selected to represent University College Dublin in Galway as part of the Irish Student Drama Awards. It was nominated for 4 awards, including Best Actor and Best Director, and took home the Judges' Discretionary Award for Best Ensemble. In 2020, Ciaran began work on a new anthology audio drama podcast series titled They're Only Stories, as part of the Headstuff Network, serving as host and series producer. So, with all that being said, Ciaran's clearly achieved a lot, and he'll continue to do so. Our talk was recorded in summer of 2022, and we talked about Ciaran's amazing creative projects and the opportunities that exist for artists with the availability of digital technology. We also talked about producing horror in the creative arts and marketing. So, there's plenty here for everyone. So please do enjoy. It'll be great to hear from you, Ciaran. It's been a while since we've spoken to each other, as we were saying earlier. So, you know, who are you and what do you do? Who is Ciaran Gallagher, if you would?
Okay, well, my name is Ciaran Gallagher, as you mentioned there, Matthew. I'm a theatre director, designer, and currently an arts marketing administrator as well. Mike, and yeah, that's kind of me in a nutshell.
Well, that's a good kind of combination, I mean, some people would say, "Oh, that's an interesting combination," and a lot of people would actually. So, what got you into both those things? Marketing and theatre in all forms, directing, etc.
Okay. Well, I'll start off with the theatrical stuff, I suppose, and then I'll talk about the marketing stuff afterwards. What got me into directing and design in particular was you started off in UCD Dramstock effectively, but I'd been in Anne Kavanagh's youth theatre for donkey's years before that. And I thought when I was there that I really wanted to be an actor. And I tried my best. I gave it a good shot kind of thing. And I ended up getting a few small parts in TV series and short RT dramas and little things like that. So I definitely had the bug for it. And then went to UCD and started performing in shows and that kind of thing. And I directed one show just as an aside because I wanted to give it a try. And I just ended up falling in love with the whole process, like kind of 10 times more than I actually really had with acting. I hadn't fallen out of love with acting, but I just certainly wasn't finding the kind of creativity of it as engaging as I did when I directed that piece, for instance. And that piece was The Glass Menagerie. And it's a wonderful piece by Tennessee Williams. And what was that? So it was directing the show, like kind of, driving the actors to like, bring a piece to the stage and like showing and guiding them to like the best performance they can give kind of thing really gave me a huge amount of confidence. And also like just really, really good to see like them from an audition room to the finished product just was very rewarding. And I just really kind of wanted to keep chasing that feeling. So that's what kind of got me into it, and I was kind of hooked from there. And also the other thing I was saying earlier on was just I love one thing about theatre that I really, really love, especially when it comes to like directing and designing stuff, is theatre amalgamates like all of the things that I really am interested in and also really enjoy. So music, visuals, art, literature, all these kind of elements, they all come together seamlessly to create a story that an audience has to watch before it becomes theatre. And for me, that was just a super rewarding experience, and I just love that. And so that was the first show I directed, and then I ended up kind of doing a few more shows in UCD. I think the biggest one I did, actually, yourself, you were in, Matthew. We did a version of Hamlet, which was performed to Leaving Cert students, with the intention of them seeing a version of the play before they sit down and write about it for their Leaving Cert. And Hamlet was the piece I did for my Leaving Cert, so it was really, really interesting to work on that show, because you look at it from a Leaving Cert perspective. You're learning quotes. You're just like, understanding theme, and you're understanding kind of character and all that kind of stuff. But then when you have to like literally work with the text, with people who have opinions and have ideas of a character and have ideas of how things are going to work out, it suddenly just changes your whole relationship with the piece. And that for me was just another really rewarding experience of just sitting down with a character that we thought we knew when we were in sixth year, to 5 years down the line, where I was sitting in a room with a guy who was Hamlet. In fact, that was Hamlet, that I then had to, evoke the emotions and evoke the kind of the language that I thought was important at the time. And I realized that there was things that like I thought were different now, and like how my opinion changed over time and that kind of thing. But yeah, that was a wonderful, wonderful experience as well. And that was a great one. And yeah, so that's kind of how I got into it. And yeah, I'll mention it. I suppose I'll talk briefly about the marketing aspect of things as well. I basically, before the pandemic, I needed kind of a career change, because it was as you know, arts has limited funding and limited capabilities to make kind of regular steady income. So I ended up just getting a job in a startup company. I was working with a company called Flipdish, doing marketing for them. And I of all the roles in like commercial business kind of areas, at least marketing you can still remain to be creative. You can like I'm doing a lot of content creation, video work, graphic design, that kind of stuff. So that was for me, that scratched the creative itch, but it also pays the bills. So that was the main thing. And yeah, no, ever since actually a year ago yesterday, I joined the Lear and the Lear Academy in Dublin, which is the National Academy of Dramatic Arts, where we training the next generation of budding actors from all over the world and the island of Ireland. And yeah, that's been really, really wonderful. It's really nice to be selling and creating content and creating work for an educational institution that is, really, really putting some big names on the map. Like Paul Mescal has just come out of that place, and Alison Oliver, who's just recently performed in Conversations with Friends, who only graduated the year before, and this is her first thing straight out of the Lear. So yeah, it's really exciting place to be at the moment, and it's I'm very privileged to be selling and marketing them for other people.
I'm just wondering, I mean, you're absolutely right. It definitely is. And, it's interesting because I'm just wondering, like, you mentioned Hamlet. I remember being in that. It was a great experience, and your directorial style. But before we talk a bit about, how you direct, etc., I'm wondering, did your time working in Dramsoc, working in student productions in UCD, etc., did that maybe kind of influence you to think, oh, okay, maybe it'd be good to, work in a, another educational institution such as the Lear, or, etc.? Or am I looking too much into it? Is it because, the Lear is also like UCD, a great place, and, you wanted to work there as well? Yeah. Or was there a link between the education?
Well, it's not really a link between education so much. I mean, like, I do love, I think the Lear was just an opportunity that appeared at the right time, and also just made sense to me as well, because it's one thing working for a theater company, I think, and another thing working for an educational institution that is like selling theater and like training people and all that kind of thing. I've no real qualms where I was working. It was just that thing of I knew I needed to be in a creative environment, and I knew I wanted to be like in an arts administration area or arts in general. Like, it's my degree is in drama. I'm now working, doing a business related field, but in an area that my degree is in. So, and that for me was important because it's an area that I really care about and I always have cared about, and still to this day, really, I'm very passionate about the Irish art scene. I really want to see the Irish art scene flourish effectively. And if I've got a small part in playing that to help the next generation of people who will be artists down the line, then that for me is like, that's good enough for me. I don't teach there or anything like that, but I mean, the fact that I have like something to kind of help in some capacity to allow art to still flourish in Ireland, that for me is enough.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I see. Well, that's extremely interesting. Yeah, no, it's great to get your perspective on that, because as well as that, like what I was going to mention was your directorial style and your directorial work.
Hmm.
I know that it may not be a conscious thing. Some people think of directorial style, etc. But
Hmm.
when you direct a play, getting emotions out of actors, and actresses, getting good performances out of actors and actresses, and everyone in general with their work.
Yeah.
Is there a particular like method, or perhaps it's too fluid to say, oh yeah, there's a method, it's not a theorem? Would
Hmm.
you be able to talk a bit about how you go about doing that kind of thing when you're directing a show?
Sure. Um, I wouldn't say I have a method as such. I just have this thing of like, for me anyway, when I'm doing a scene with an actor, like I really the one emotion or the one thing that I think that really helps an actor to kind of get into a scene and like can draw emotion out of them is just like the empathy of the character and having empathy yourself. Like I think you need empathy and they need empathy to understand each other. And when that is like in full flow, that's when emotions are drawn out correctly. And I find that if we're working if we're working on a show, for instance, that has a scene where like there's a particularly emotional resonance in it, that slow coaxing and a slow development of empathy for the scene and what the context of the scene is and what they're thinking and what their emotion is and what their motivation in those scenes are. That for me is I find the best way to get something out of an actor and a best way for them to work forward as well. And it's something as well that one thing I'm very, very like, not passionate, but like, steadfast in my ways with when it comes to that thing is just I don't want to go up and do it myself and show them how to do it. They have to get there themselves. And when they do, I think the accomplishment of them like hitting that emotion, hitting the beat that correctly, that resonates with them, and it also just solidifies like kind of that emotional state that they need to kind of hit. Then the only challenge then after that, they have to do it every night again and again and again. But I think once they've realized that they've got there themselves, just yes, I mean I've helped them to get there, but like it is them ultimately that's gotten there. And I think that's important for them to know that. And once they do know that, that really helps with for emotional resonance and scenes like that. In terms of other style though, like one thing I'm very like in terms of my style of directing though as well, I'm very passionate. I'm very once again steadfast in the idea of letting the ensemble, so the actors who are on that stage, letting them guide the production and letting them guide the performance. Because at the end of the day, they're the ones on stage doing it. I'm not. I'm just the one who has an idea of how it should look and how it should feel. And it's my job then to try and get the most out of them to hit what I'm trying to reach and for them to get there themselves. That's the one thing I'm very, very passionate about. Yes, I have one or two moments where like, I don't like how you saying that line, but that's just me then. But if they have an idea themselves, I want to hear that. If they have a suggestion for how they should do a scene differently, I want to hear that as well. I always want to try that. Um, it only just it's very democratic as far as I'm concerned. The way I want the rehearsal room to be. I hope that
Yes,
makes
no, I
sense.
absolutely no, yeah, I agree, because I remember obviously, working on Dune. It was great, and very democratic feel, very well, there be populist in a good way, right? But
Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
Oh yeah.
So
No, it's yeah. Everyone. It's as I said, like everyone in that room on that stage is part of the ensemble who's going to be seen, and ultimately is the one who like creates the emotional resonance for the audience that they will get out of it. So it needs to come from the actors, I find, and I just hope that like anything I do is just to kind of help them just to get there easily and get there, as just to help them to get there together as a team. It's very much a teamwork kind of thing in my books, and that's the way I kind of like to run it.
a bit like sport in some ways, no?
Yeah, actually, it'd be very like sport to be honest. Yeah, it's a team effort, and it's a team that like it needs to work together to get to the end product. Now, it's not winning, but it is to create something emotionally resonant for an audience that will come away and like that story was told so well that like yeah, that's the thing. That's the one thing about art that like I love so much. It's like the only thing that like makes you feel emotions that like don't make sense to your situation. So you're sitting in a theater and you feel sad. It's that thing of like I shouldn't be feeling sad. I'm out celebrating. But the art has driven you to be like that, and that's what I find. And yeah, so once the actors are able to achieve that, that's like for me all I need from them.
Yeah, no, very good, very good. That's definitely a great aim to have on doing a show. And so, you know some of the projects you've worked on, if you could fill people in on that. I know you mentioned the great Hamlet performance that we did. Any other shows as well since then, before then, during that,
Yeah,
even
yeah.
simultaneously?
I'll give you a quick summary. So I did a lot of kind of lighting and tech work. So I was a kind of a freelance kind of technician, lampy, around Dublin for a few years. I would just spend a lot of time in Smock Alley, a lot of time in the new theatre, place like that, just doing designs and doing just D-rigs, sound designs, all that kind of stuff. So, and that was keeping me quite busy for a while. And I really enjoyed doing that. But like, I didn't do that much directing in that time, which was unfortunate. But that was just simply because of I was kind of fresh out of college. The only directing I was doing was Seen and Heard, which is a great little festival that Smock Alley hosts every February. And so I was consistently working on little tiny shows all the time. And then I directed a show with Mac Miramadi, who was a UCD alumni as well. And we did a show called The Last Corner Shop, Misery Hill, which we co-directed. I just started my real job at the time. Around the same time we kicked off rehearsals with that, so he co-directed it with me. And that was like the first show that I'd done outside of Dramstock, where like outside of college, where like we had time, and we had actors in a room, and we had people who were like we had one or two Lear graduates we had two Lear graduates in the show, actually, who were fresh out of the Lear from acting college, and we had a few seasoned performers who weren't in our age range. They were like older actors and people who were in their 50s and that kind of thing. So that was really, really fun for that. And what was also really lovely as well was we had like zero constraint in terms of artistic creativity with it as well. So the script that Mac gave me was very different to the script that went on stage, for instance, because we chopped away at it and we changed things and we made it different and bigger and better. And like the original draft, I think, ends with like a hostage situation, and what actually ended up happening on stage was the shop got burnt down, so I had to burn down a shop in Smock Alley. I mean, that was fun. So all through theatrical, all through lighting and that kind of thing, but just that kind of thing. So that was the big one after that. And then I suppose the most important one then I've done in a while was I directed a show called The Horror Writer, which with a woman by the name of Emily Gillmor Murphy, who is also a playwriting alumni from the Lear as well. And she sent me on this lovely little script about an aging man who's in a nursing home, who a new nurse starts in the ward, and he was a fiction horror writer when he was younger. And he's got one more story that he thinks he might write down. So he tells it to this nurse, and the story then begins to unfold around her. And we go back and forth through time through the whole process. And it was a really lovely little show to work on, and I really loved doing it. Once again, like, just had this lovely creative freedom, which Emily offers, as like she was a producer on the show, and just that was a great little show to work on. And Brian Burrows, who was of Beowulf fame and a few of the pieces, he was the lead actor in it, and it was really that was my first time working with someone like Brian as well, and like he was just a wonder to work with. And but what's significant about working on that show was myself and Emily are now like creating work quite a lot together, and we have set up a production company as well called Riots Productions, where we are creating theater. But during the pandemic, we obviously had to create something a little bit different, so we ended up moving into the world of audio, and as a result, we've created 5 projects to date now that are all audio based experiences in some shape or form. We had a podcast, we had at home audio horror experience, we had a 6-part comedy drama which is currently on Spotify, and we also did a immersive walking tour of Bray, which was a story which is told to you as you walk the Bray seafront. So that was all in the last 2 years, so very busy. But yeah, and I'll give you the exclusive scoop. We're working on something else, which is going to be a live theater play. But that's all I can say right now.
Well, that's very exciting, absolutely, and I love that kind of blend of technology and performance. So I suppose it'd be great to hear a little bit more about how you worked on those projects, and also the opportunities that modern technology, in your opinion, can kind of open for storytelling in general.
Yeah.
Any thoughts on that?
Oh yeah, sure. Absolutely. Well, I'll kick off with Blind, I suppose. So the Horror Writer was due to go to the new theater for Halloween 2020, which was I was very looking forward to that. But as you can imagine, something got in the way, and we weren't allowed to sit near anyone. So as a kind of pivot towards that, do you remember? I think July, June of 2020, when things were starting to kind of seem like they're opening up again, and things like seem to be going in the right direction. We had a chat with Anthony, who's the artistic director of the new theater, and he was like, I want to do something. I want to do that show, but so if we might put that on we might put it on if everything's back open again by October. But if we can't do that and we can have some audience in, could we make something else that would be, that could be safe? So we could do it for small audiences. That's short. Something, think us in the box kind of thing as to what we could do. So Emily and myself sort of kind of just put our heads together, and we came up with this concept of, if you were to go into the theater to sit down to watch a talk, and you have, it's like someone left the PA on in the background, so you can hear backstage, but you can't see anything. And we came up with the idea of, like, someone's about to come out and do a talk, power goes, they can't get out, but we can still hear them because their mic is live, effectively. I think the idea of that really just like tickled me quite a bit, because I was just like, I love the idea of someone being trapped who they can't see us, but we can hear them and we can hear everything they're doing. And so then the idea was then to create like a kind of a haunting experience, effectively, where, like, you sit in the theater, you put headphones on, and the stage is just empty. It's all set up for like a talk, but the talk never appears because she's backstage, caught dealing with this entity that's appeared in front of her and started speaking to her. And we can hear everything because it's the microphone's attached to her. Obviously, though, we couldn't do that either, because October we were back to full, no one's allowed out kind of thing anymore. So we ended up creating as an at-home experience. And the idea was like recovered audio, effectively, like a found footage kind of thing, but it's recovered audio. And you're listening to this woman who is about to give a talk, and her microphone's still on, and it's live, and your man's recorded the whole thing. And while she's trapped in the room, she's visited by something, and it speaks to her, and they end up having a great old chat. And then it turns out that it's something else altogether. And yeah, it was just a really fun project to work on, because naturally we had limitations to work, but technology is what saved that project ultimately, because we had to adapt, and it meant that myself and Emily were having conversations over Zoom, and we were recording. I was doing field stuff, in my house with things I had around me and that kind of thing. And then we were able to share the audio then through the internet. We could listen to the whole thing. And we sold the show through the internet as well. So it was like technology is what saved that show ultimately. But it's also a very technologically based show, because it was edited very highly, and it's very, production heavy. So it's, the technology is what kind of, made that show what it was. Whereas it could have been a simple story of someone who's just backstage, who's just has a mic there, and they're just we block it around them. But technology is what like made that show what it was, if you ask me. And that show was became Blind.
Yes, Blind, absolutely. Yeah, that was an extremely impressive work indeed, because it's interesting, like, in terms of using words like, show or play, but then actually, technology kind of sometimes can open up all these new avenues for kind of audiences asking, what is this? What type of medium is this? And
yeah, but that's what it did, though, because it was like, it's not a podcast, it's not a play, it's not a show, it's like it's an at-home experience is what we kind of ended up like calling it. Do you know what I mean? Because it was like, what is it? It was like, I don't know, it's a half an hour little thing. It's not a radio drama, it's you should be at home listening to it in the dark. That's the idea. So yeah, but that's what I found that really interesting as well. Just like, what are we calling this? But it was still, it's easier to kind of call it a show in one sense, because it is just an event, it's an experience, it's a thing you gotta get yourself invested in to listen to the story and have a story told to you some way. But it's just, we just got to be strict with how you do it, otherwise you won't get the full effect of it. So yeah, does that make sense?
Yeah, well, absolutely. I mean, it's just so interesting. I mean, I think there's sort of a whole world of things that can be discussed with the use of digital technology in particular, like you've been talking about with Blind and the internet, creative fiction online, that kind of thing. which is sort of a interesting area for both practical and academic work.
Yeah.
So it'd be great to hear more of your insights on that. I mean, what sort of did you ever sort of like what sort of challenges did you run into maybe when making those kinds of productions, and how did you overcome those challenges?
Didn't really actually. They're actually fairly handy and fairly straightforward, to be honest. I mean, I'd say the most challenging aspect of it was just the fact that, like, I wouldn't say challenging now, but like almost disappointing about these kind of things, just because you put a lot of time and work into these projects, and you'll work with directors, so you work with actors, excuse me, and you work with, I'm working very close to Emily and all these kind of things, and then the amount of time and effort that would go into it to create something and then to release it, there's no applause at the end. There's no chatter. There's no post-show drink about what you experienced anymore, and you're kind of relying on Twitter effectively, or that kind of thing. And that was the only, I wouldn't say challenge, but it was certainly kind of like a little bit disheartening about. That's the only disheartening thing I'd say about it, because you'd work on something for so long and only to have it just exist now in a really liminal space, which is just online somewhere. And yes, you can see the ticket sales, you can see people's reactions, you can see it's had several 100-hour listening time, etc. But there's no kind of celebration afterwards, or kind of just to complete that mise en scène of like what that show was, if that makes sense. It never formally ends, it just lingers forever. And I found that one very kind of hard to deal with, and I found that one kind of disheartening after like the third or fourth project that we worked on, because as creatives, you need creative feedback, and you also need creative what's the word, you need, I think the applause is so important. It just solidifies that what you did was appreciated, and it was experienced correctly. And yeah, that was a challenge in terms of like dealing with online work. But that's just a personal experience now.
Well, yeah, no, I can see how that would be a challenge on a personal level, absolutely, and a creative level as well, as you mentioned. Do you think sometimes potentially that lingering sort of sense of an online work being over maybe sometimes was particularly evocative, positively or negatively, or was it mostly for you maybe kind of a negative not having that applause? Or were there ever times where it actually added to the maybe eerie sense when you're making a horror sort of based online production?
I think I do like with the horror stuff in particular. Emily's a big horror nerd, so I can't do horror. I don't like horror movies at all, but I like making them. I'm a big fan of making them now, because I spent time with them. But what was I going to say? Particularly with horror pieces, though, like they do work well, like as a lingering kind of piece that's just kind of out there and like in this liminal space that exists. Because it's that thing of, if someone stumbles across it now in some capacity and listens to it and kind of goes, Jesus, what the fuck was that? It's suddenly then, it's now, granted, I'll never know about that experience, but necessarily, but it lends itself quite well to that kind of work, if that makes sense. And on top of that as well, actually, we did a 6-part comedy drama, effectively, called We Need to Talk About the Ducks, which was a tragic comedy, kind of Channel 4 style, young 30-something-year-olds trying to wrap their heads around, loss and friendship and, that kind of thing. But that piece as well, for instance, it just serves as a nice little kind of thing on Spotify that is just a nice 3-hour story that exists there for someone who finds themselves going into it or whatever. And that lends itself quite nicely to, audio work in particular, I find.
Yeah. So bit of a timelessness to it in a way. It's like,
it's always there.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's like a film,
Yeah, no, absolutely. And on that note, given timelessness, I suppose a lot of people would say that the ancient sort of performance is timeless, or at least the principles of it or the inspiration of it can be timeless. So moving all the way back from digital technology, absurdly back from it, would you be interested in kind of the sort of like oral poetry, that kind of thing, and sort of things that some people would look to, and they talk about like I don't know, pre-modern. I don't know, is that the right term specifically, but
Yeah.
way before digital technology. Would you be interested in that kind of like ancient theater stuff, the foundations for theater, that kind of thing?
Oh God, yeah, absolutely. Sure, my degree's in drama. Like, I studied classics in secondary school, and couldn't get enough of it. I was just loved it so much. But just the origins of theater as a whole, like like the Greek tragedy style and that kind of thing. That's paved the way though for like, as far as I'm concerned, like the whole way through time, effectively. Like that's the one constant has always been like we have performers on stage that we as an audience will have to go watch, and the tradition of like the proscenium, the tradition of a chorus, and like the tradition of the lead tragic character and like the foil and all that kind of stuff. It all still resonates today, and like it's very very it's still exists, like, and to the point where like there are still versions of plays from antiquity that are being done today because there is a lot of relevancy in like what these people are going through to a certain extent that we can translate to a modern audience quite well. So absolutely, I mean it's like the Odyssey was like one of the most fun thing I studied in secondary school, and I will shout about it from the rooftop. I thought it was the most. I had such a time, such fun reading that. But in that oral tradition, though, I can see how that would have changed as well, and I just love how like I love how stories are kind of passed down, and it's this thing of like with oral tradition versus like say like a piece of technology that exists online, that is what it's always going to be, whereas like an oral tradition of storytelling is going to remain ever changing and fluid and moving through time, and like other people's experiences and biases come into it, and that changes the narrative, can change the narrative, sorry, and also can change the context of it for like people down the line. So yeah, no, I mean it's I'm look, storytelling as a whole is like basically like what we as creatives have to try and make. Even in marketing, it's all about creating a story that people want to buy. So that's how that's why they're so important. That's why like they it's versus, sorry, that's it, yeah. Storytelling is important. Oral tradition works in its own way, and stuff that remains forever as like what the singular piece of art that it is also has this important part in what our culture.
Yeah, well, very well said. Yeah, no,
I hope
absolutely.
so.
And
It was a bit rambly now.
well, no, I think it was perfectly well said, and I'm sure other people will agree. I mean, like it's sort of like over the decades and centuries, I suppose maybe people would argue that there's a bit of a lack of attention sometimes given to the arts, and given the name of this podcast, Commendable Commotion, it's kind of one of the aims is to kind of get people talking about things that need to be talked about. So would you agree with that kind of sentiment that the arts kind of need to be given more attention, or do you think maybe now people are maybe beginning to give it more attention? It's a bit better. What do you think of that?
I would have agreed with you that the art needed more attention before the pandemic. Now I think that it is definitely getting a lot more of a spotlight on it now, more so than beforehand. Like when I say the arts now in particular, I only really work in kind of theater and audio and such. Film isn't like an area I'd work in now that much, but and like film is always going to be wanted, and film is always going to have money pumped into it, just for the big people, not for like the smaller kind of independent films and that kind of thing. So when I'm talking about art, and I mean I'm talking like independent films and like theater production and like that kind of stuff. But the one thing that the pandemic showed everyone is that we do need art, and we need stories, we need human connection that other people create and display for us to like keep us going. I think like before the pandemic, it was very hard to get funding opportunities. I found I personally was never successfully funded for anything I did before the pandemic. Now during the pandemic, myself and Emily have been successfully funded a few times, and we've received like quite generous amounts of cash from the Arts Council and the Broadcasting Authority of Ireland to create work. And that for me, like kind of, now granted it's a very selfish experience, so like yes, the arts are being funded because I'm getting funded, but there is like definitely a bit more of an onus now to make sure people's work is being seen. Even that introduction to the artist's basic wage that came in a few months ago, people who are artists can receive a basic wage from the government on top of whatever work they're doing as well to keep them alive and subsidize them. And especially the cost of living crisis that's going on here in Ireland at the moment, this kind of stuff really is so important for art, and it's still work needs to be done, I think, to make sure that because I know for instance in the UK and in I believe Rome, when Emily was working on a show over, huge, but that was all from the Arts Council of Rome government to make sure that art was still produced, and Italian theatrical artistic endeavors were at the forefront, because I mean it's important for tourism, it's important for the people, it's important for everyone, and Ireland is slowly kind of getting there. They could do better, but I mean I'm gonna have to commend them for the last while. They've seemed to have kind of pulled their socks up a bit, and art's actually getting a bit more of the art that the art that I engage with, and I think a lot of other people I know who are in this industry engage with, smaller, fringier, nicher kind of aspects, things are getting some of the recognition they deserve now, and it's good, and I hope it just keeps going that way.
Yeah, no, that's reassuring. I know, because it's sort of it's all I can say really is how reassuring it is. And so in terms of, but it's great to get your insight on that as well, because I think it's really shows the appreciation that goes into that as well. And so in terms of then let's say in terms of marketing and that sort of thing, what would you say are kind of particularly creative ways to market, essentially? Whether it's I suppose primarily in the arts, whether it's a play or a film or whatever.
Yeah.
What in your experience, what are good ways of marketing something? I mean, is it through an artistic project in and of itself? Is it just through a sort of an advert on a wall kind of thing, or what sort of ideas hit your mind when you think of marketing?
Well, that's a good question, Matthew. For me, anyway, I think what works for me anyway is very much social advertising currently. So any concerts I go to, any theater shows I go to. Now, theater actually, I kind of know what's going on just because of the people in the circles I keep. So I know about through word of mouth. I actually know kind of a lot of what's happening in theater circles. But in terms of say music, I'm a massive music lover, and I go to I'll go to see anyone in concert effectively. I just crave live performances so much, and I'm making up for lost time now because I couldn't do that for 2 years. But I just find, for me anyway, kind of what really sells that is just kind of social advertising, and I find that's what's really really drags me in, and it catches me off guard kind of thing, and I like that about it. And it's just oh, they're playing, well, I better go see them. So and that's just that is an example of that's one night only versus something that's running for a while. So that's social advertising for me works that way. But because I think print's not dead, but print's not doing well, if that makes sense. And I think a lot of it frees up budgets for advertising stuff when we can do things digitally, because it really does. It can last a bit longer digitally, and also it just kind of disappears nicely when it's done. So that's I know it's a very basic answer, but that's kind of just basic advertising is kind of what really helps with a lot of that kind of stuff. And then with the other thing I was going to say is I think creating stories and creating narratives in a campaign, for instance, of something you want to sell is going to help sell them going to that piece of art that ultimately you want them to get to, if that makes sense. So for instance, I think TikTok, for instance, as a platform is absolutely mental, but it is something that can really kind of create the beginning of a narrative that you might be interested in and want to learn more about, and as a result you end up for yourself then figuring it out, kind of thing. And that also goes in with YouTube as well and all these kind of platforms. But that giving them the beginning of a story and a narrative that's going to want to have them hooked in is what really helps, particularly anyway I find with just with plays. It gets people interested, just that little nugget of just information that you have to come pay you have to buy a ticket to find out more, So yeah, that would be what I'm kind of that would be my 2 cents in that anyway.
Yeah, because it's interesting from kind of a post-production standpoint, or I suppose a trailer, I mean, usually that would be done, I suppose, usually before a film, for instance, is released. So I mean, with a film, I know that it's all kind of about getting the basic information in, but in a way that really, really amps up tension and gets people excited. So would you say that, like, movie trailers, I know it's film specifically, not theater, but would you say that like movie trailers are kind of a good example to go by for theater advertising as well?
Oh yeah. I mean, like, the only thing about trailers is, like, when you go to the cinema, you're just bombarded with about 20 of them for about 10 minutes, and that's great because, I mean, it puts them on your radar, and it means it's films you want to go see then at some point down the line. Like, yeah, so no, they work, they always work. They're not going to go away anytime soon because they're great. And yeah, they're a nice little that's the thing, as I said, like with narrative, like, they create like a little one for what, 2 minutes maximum, 30 seconds, and it's enough to kind of go, I need to find out more. I need closure. I need a conclusion to this. But with theater, though, like, because you haven't got the luxury of, I mean, it's not excuse me. It's out of the realms of possibility. It's going to happen down the line now. We'll be sitting in the Abbey Theatre and there'll be a screen on stage being like, Brian Friel's Translations is up next. I don't think we're that far away from seeing something like that happen, to be honest, in the theatre, when people just sit down and have a you know what I mean? We get like a 30-second trailer of like what's coming up next. But yeah, because theatre and that kind of thing is like a digital advertising is like the only real way to kind of sell theatre, I think, now. And with print kind of being not as important as it was anymore, with just, from an environmental point of view, but also from like just a I think just a generational kind of thing as well. Like, I'm going to be much more likely to, I'll pick up a program, but I'm not going to pick up a flyer necessarily. Do you know that kind of way? Yeah. I think like a lot of younger people as well, in particular, will be very much like-minded at the thing of like, I have the ad, I have a picture on my phone, I have that now. That's what I need. I don't need the information elsewhere. And the pandemic as well, with everything going digital stuff versus print, made a difference to that as well. Yeah, I'm rambling again now, sorry, but yeah, does that make sense?
It does. No, I just think that's great insight. I mean, like, it really does, because I mean, a lot of people would say it's generational, but I mean, there are all these other factors as well that you mentioned, like, I mean, environmental, for instance.
Yeah.
And yeah, so no, that does make sense. And have you ever, like, sort of made a narrative as part of a promotional campaign, or is that, because I know some people, I mean, the Blair Witch Project did that, and that was a movie, I know. But would you ever think of doing that, or have you done that sort of thing before?
Oh yeah, no, it's super important. Now, I'm much more so than my previous role, which is in Flipdish, which was a food ordering software kind of thing. But like, a lot of I used to write a lot of blogs for them, a lot of articles for them, and the idea behind that was you Google a key term. So like, if you're a restaurant owner, so we had to get into the minds of restaurant owners and kind of be like, what would they be Googling because they have a problem with something, and we have the solution for it. So how do they find it? So what they would type in, for instance, is like food management software, or restaurant stock solution kind of thing. And the article we would have written would have been something like your restaurant inventory management system, is there a better way, or something like that? And they're going to suddenly click on that then, and then you have this full article then, which is like, just which I've written, which has the keywords they're looking for and offers a solution at the end of the narrative, which is, buy this product. It's gonna fix your problem. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that was like that was very much kind of, that's a long game kind of bit of marketing. It's SEO kind of based, search engine optimization and keywords and that kind of thing. But with that, for instance, like, I did something kind of similar with the Lear recently, where we had like a few of our graduates were nominated for Irish Times Theatre Awards. So we spun a little article, which was like, Lear graduates at the Irish Times Theatre Awards was like the headline kind of thing. So when you typed in Lear, like the Lear or Lear graduates and news articles, and you click the news section, or you just like see your top results, underneath the website you had articles about like what's going on with graduates. And then suddenly someone who might be interested in, like, want to pursue a career as an actor, or someone who wants to actually maybe study for a master's program in performance, or like, is there not performance, and like directing or design and that kind of thing, suddenly then they have this incentive of just like, okay, well, this place is producing actors who are producing people who are award winners. And suddenly then it's creating a narrative for them because of like, this journey of like, starting out performing something and winning this award or whatever, and versus, the people who have done it already and are now winning the awards. It's the narrative was basically like, we have award winners and here they are now. If you come in yourself, you could be an award winner. That's just, I mean, at the end of the day though, we are just trying to sell, we're selling the course, we're selling like people going to the Lear.
Yeah, no, I see what you mean. Yeah, so it kind of fits into all these different things. And, the sense I'm getting from talking to you as well, from all these different topics, is just the prevalence of technology. Like, I mean, search engine optimization and, blogs and all this kind of thing. I mean, some people may say, oh, I don't know, but I think it's really exciting. So, I suppose you'd agree with that?
That's work.
Yeah,
it's work for me, but it's at the same time, like, it just means, but it's nice that like there's creative outlets to create narratives and create stories that like are just engaging with like potential customers for stuff down the line. Like it's how do I put it? I forgot what I was going to say. Sorry. But yes, I agree with you. I know.
Yeah. It's a complex kind of subject, but it's just it's incredibly interesting just how digital technology is sort of just everywhere, but in a good way. Like, I mean, there's room for traditional theater as well. Of course.
Well, as long as I've got like some sense, I mean, always room for it. It's that thing of just like if we can embrace like blending technology with it, that's the way forward, I think. And like, for instance, this secret show that we're working on is we're hoping to have like a very AV heavy, so like audio visual kind of stuff, so a lot of like a lot of screens and a lot of stuff that's visually like moving and is like projected and that kind of thing. So that's something and like that's technology based, and we're not moving, like the set will be minimal but the set will be alive because of technology. That's the idea anyway. That's all I can say about it for now.
Yeah, no, I mean, that sounds like a incredibly exciting project, and it's a narrative in and of itself. I mean, like, I'm just like, wow, what is this? Like, this is going to be awesome. So, other people will as well, absolutely. So I'm excited about that, and do keep us up to date on that. And I suppose before we finish up, like, what advice would you give to aspiring theater directors, or just because I know you do a lot in theater, lighting, sound, etc. Just in general, what advice would you give them? And obviously to aspiring people aspiring to work in marketing as such. I know those are two separate things kind of, but what advice would you give to those people?
I suppose the one thing is like, just one thing that's worked for me anyway is to keep yourself inspired, and that's just by consuming as much art as you can. And I mean, that is in like, read, watch good TV, go see a play, go out to a restaurant and like eat a mad 8-course meal. These things genuinely like inspire you without you even realizing it sometimes. And they do keep your drive for creating alive. And I find that's like, I mean, yeah, there's days where like I come back here and I have to edit something, for instance, and it's that thing of like the last thing I want to do after a full day sitting at the screen, looking at spreadsheets, and then is then to come home and stare at like just audio files and just try and get them all together. And then you read something on the bus, or something just inspires you, like just to kind of keep you going. And it for me that's what really helps. And so yeah, I just think consume art as much as you can is going to just inspire you to kind of want to keep working and want to make it work and want to become a professional creative effectively. And then another thing then is like just keep trying to create is the other thing as well. There's a lot of like lovely little small festivals that keep cropping up around Dublin, and and also a further afield as well. I can't actually think of any off the top of my head now, but there's creative, like Scene and Heard Festival, for instance, for me is just an absolute wonderful festival. There's festivals in new writing constantly. There's poetry reading festivals. There is open mic nights for comedy. All these things. These are just opportunities for you or whoever you are just to try something and experience something, and it'll just help you, and I think it'll just make you want to create more, and it'll drive you then to find reasons to create. And even a pandemic forced myself and Emily to create stuff, and we came out the other side now with just like with content which we are very proud of, and content that like I'm very proud of. And yeah, we made stuff, and as long as you keep making stuff, I think you will get to a stage where you'll be very happy with what you've created.
Well, those are wise words. Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. Yeah, no, that's very wise indeed. And it's beautiful to create. Akira Kurosawa said. So
Yeah,
exactly.
spot on.
Yeah, those are very wise words indeed. So thank you very much, and it's been incredibly interesting. Anything else you'd like to add? Any interesting kind of advice or stories, anything like that before we finish up?
I haven't really got. I think I've kind of really been rambling here for an awful long time. Nothing. No, I think I've said it all. And I mean, if anyone is, that's the thing. If anyone is like, I've nothing to plug at the moment, because the thing I would like to plug is a big secret, so I have to be quiet. But yeah, I suppose if you want to listen to some of like the stuff I've created, maybe Their Only Stories is a 6-part anthology horror podcast, which is on Spotify and anywhere you get your podcasts. We need to talk about The Ducks, which is that little 6-part thing I was telling you about. It's a lovely tragic comedy story. That's also on Spotify currently. Bliss and Blind, you can learn more about them on our website, which is rightsproductions.com. And I'll send you over that stuff if you'd like to share it around. But yeah, that'd be kind of the stuff that I'm working on. And I suppose advice wise, just if you want, are interested in creating this kind of stuff yourself, just go for it. That's what I did, and it's been a pleasure.
Very good, very good. Well, thank you very much, Ciaran. It's been great talking to you. And
Great talking to you too.
Thank you very much.